Hello everyone, I'm Travis.
And I'm Nicole.
And let's get wanderlost. In our last video we talked about our travel to Barcelona, our day in Barcelona, and embarkation day aboard Symphony of the Seas. In today's video we're going to talk about the first two ports from this 7-night Mediterranean cruise, Palma de Mallorca and Marseille, France. To start off, we'll talk about breakfast aboard Symphony of the Seas. I'm not the biggest fan of most breakfast places aboard most of the cruise ships that we've been on, and we wanted to try something different for this cruise. If you didn't know, on Oasis class ships, they have a Johnny Rockets in the boardwalk area of the ship. And Johnny Rockets normally is a specialty dining venue where you have to pay extra to eat there. The only time that you don't have to pay extra to eat there and it's complimentary is for breakfast. And I'll say Johnny Rockets has the best breakfast for any of the venues aboard any Royal Caribbean ship. We had breakfast at Johnny Rockets several times on this cruise, and we ordered something different almost every single time. I had the BELT sandwich a few times, the pancakes and bacon, and Nicole, she had the breakfast scramble, which had scrambled eggs and sausage and a few other things, and the French toast. And one of the cool things that you can order at Johnny Rockets for breakfast is the maple bacon milkshake. It does cost a couple dollars to order this, but it was actually pretty good. It's kind of weird to have a milkshake for breakfast, but it was decent and I liked it. So if you're on an Oasis class ship, we definitely recommend trying Johnny Rockets for breakfast. It's much better than any of the other breakfast options on the ship.
Our first stop was Palma de Mallorca, Spain, and we didn't have an excursion planned for this port. So we took the €10 per person shuttle. When you get off the ship, there will be ticket booths in the terminal, and you do have to pay cash to get your ticket. But that bus takes you to the main kind of city center of Palma. It kind of drops you off right near the cathedral, which is Santa Maria Cathedral. It does cost about €10 to go inside if you would like, but the grounds are fairly large, so we just walked around outside, took photos and video. It is right on the water, so it is a very nice area. And then after that, we just kind of walked the streets of Palma. There's a lot of shopping, dining, all in that general area, a ton of streets to explore. So the main thing we did was just take in the sights, go into the shops, take a look at some of the dining options, and just walk the streets of Palma. That took us a couple hours, and then it did start to rain. So after that point, we just kind of headed back to the ship.
There are several different types of excursions you can take at Palma de Mallorca. We decided not to do any of them because they were either kind of expensive or just didn't really interest us. There's the Drac Caves and a few other places. I suggest going on the Shore Excursions group or Royal Caribbean's website and seeing what's available. If you're going to Palma, maybe one of those excursions will kind of catch your eye and you'll want to do one of those. We kind of just wanted to have a chill port since this was 5 ports in 5 days, and we had some bigger things planned for some of the ports later on this cruise. So when we got back to the ship, we had dinner reservations set up for 150 Central Park in the Central Park area of Symphony of the Seas. This was, as I said in my last video, or our last video, my birthday. It was actually my 40th birthday, which is kind of scary. So we decided to go to 150 Central Park. We had never been to this restaurant before, but we heard great things about it from some of our friends who had tried it on some of the other Royal Caribbean ships. The menu for 150 Central Park is a little bit more upscale and a little bit more towards the fine dining type of restaurant as compared to the other restaurants that are aboard Symphony of the Seas. So Nicole, she ordered the scallops for her appetizer, the lobster for her main course, and then a peanut butter chocolate tart for her dessert. I had the pumpkin bisque for my appetizer, which was really good. And I also had the pork belly as an appetizer. My main course was the venison, which was probably the best steak that I've had on any of the ships. And then I had the deep fried or fried cheesecake for dessert, which was actually pretty good as well. Overall, the experience at 150 Central Park was really good. The service was on par with Coastal Kitchen that we experienced on Odyssey of the Seas, and the food was as good, if not better, than any of the specialty dining restaurants that we've tried on any of the ships that we've been on. We definitely recommend you try 150 Central Park on your next trip aboard an Oasis class Royal Caribbean ship. Day 3 was our next port, and it was Marseille, France. So we didn't know this beforehand, but to get from the port in Marseille to the city area, you actually have to take a shuttle, and they charge $20 per person for this shuttle. To pay for this shuttle, it's done very similar to an excursion. You can go to the shore excursion desk, or you can go to the little kiosks that are by the Bionic Bar and just select the Marseille shuttle, and it will charge you $20 per person and print out your tickets for you. When we got to the city of Marseille, we didn't really have a plan or any type of idea of what we wanted to do other than just walk around and check it out. So we walked around the marina area first, and we saw people selling fresh fish and crabs and other sea creatures that you could possibly cook or have for dinner. After that, we decided to walk further into town, and we had some real authentic French food at a place called Les McDonald's. Yeah, that's right. We had McDonald's in France. I kind of wanted to try McDonald's in a foreign country because the menus are a little bit different. McDonald's in France actually has potato wedges. They were actually pretty good. The chicken nuggets were less sweet than they are in America, and the burger just tasted, I guess, fresh. Overall, it was good for lunch. We needed something quick, otherwise we wouldn't probably have gone to McDonald's. But it was decent. I enjoyed the McDonald's in France. After that, Nicole had some real authentic French coffee from a place called Starbucks. Yeah, we're not original at all. We didn't branch out in France very much. But we did walk over to the Marseille Cathedral and check that building out, which was really cool. It's a gigantic building, huge church. Next to the cathedral was a dessert shop called Cookiss. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but it was a cookie shop. And inside this cookie shop, they had fresh cookie dough that you could purchase to eat, sort of like it was ice cream, and some really, really good cookies. We actually purchased the Biscoff cookie butter cookie, and it was excellent. Really, really good cookie. The cookie dough wasn't as sweet as cookie dough that you would buy in America, but it was still really good. And it wasn't that expensive either. So if you're over by the Marseille Cathedral, check out Cookiss for a quick dessert that's actually really good. After checking out the Marseille Cathedral, we walked along the main road, and we were like, you know what, let's check out the museum. We heard some really good things about it. It was one of the short excursions that you could possibly pick on the ship. So we decided to walk over there, across the street, that sort of thing. And the museums are closed on Tuesday, so we didn't actually get to check that out. So, had no clue what to do after that. So we walked around the city of Marseille a little bit more, and after a couple hours, it was time to go back to the ship. So we went back to the same place that we got dropped off on the shuttle and couldn't find the shuttle. There was a bunch of people standing there. Everybody was waiting for Royal Caribbean. No Royal Caribbean shuttles in sight. So we walked down the street a little bit, and then there was a shuttle pickup for Viking Cruise Lines, which is a luxury cruise line. And we asked the bus driver there where the Royal Caribbean bus pickup was. And they didn't speak English or spoke very little English, but a lady got off the bus and basically motioned for us to follow her. So yes, we followed a strange lady down the streets of Marseille, France, with no clue if we were going to find the Royal Caribbean bus or end up in the back of a van and never see the light of day again. We don't recommend following strange people in France. You never know what could happen. But this lady actually took us to the Royal Caribbean bus, which was about a mile or so down the street at a bus terminal. It kind of just looked like a normal Greyhound bus terminal. So if you're going to Marseille, France, and you take the shuttle there, just be mindful that the pickup for the shuttle back to the ship is not in the same place where they drop you off, and they do not tell you that. There was a lot of people waiting for the shuttle right by the marina that had no clue that you had to walk almost a mile down the street to the terminal to go back to the ship. After we got back to the ship, we had reservations for the stand-up comedy show for later that evening. So, as we kind of mentioned in the previous video, the reservations for a lot of the shows aboard Oasis-class ships come onto the app about 30 or so days before your sail date. And we made a bunch of reservations for every single show just to make sure that we would actually see what we wanted to see. One of those shows was the stand-up comedy show. It takes place in the Attic, which is the comedy club aboard Symphony of the Seas. And the comedians on this ship were Colin Moulton and Scott Henry. We had never heard of these comedians before this cruise. Apparently they had done some dry bar comedy specials before this, but didn't really know what to expect going into it. Scott Henry's jokes and overall set wasn't all that great. His jokes were a little bit outdated and the crowd really wasn't into it. Colin Moulton was a lot funnier. He was a little bit more energetic on stage, was a little bit more charismatic, and seemed to be an overall better performer than Scott did. That's one of the things about going to the stand-up comedy shows aboard the ships. You just never know who you're going to get beforehand. We've had some really good comedians on some of our previous cruises, and then some not-so-good ones. But we always recommend making sure you check out the stand-up comedy show. It's usually a good time, and you usually at least get one comedian who's pretty good.
That day when we got back to our room, we did have a compliments of the chef little snack tray waiting for us, since we are Emerald status as of that cruise. So it had some little like puff pastries, chocolate covered strawberry, things like that, which is always nice to come back to a little snack. I will say on the new Royal Caribbean cruises, something to be mindful of is that if you are not staying in a suite, if you're in just a regular balcony or interior cabin, room service is only once per day now, and they will ask you at the beginning of your cruise, do you prefer mornings or afternoons or evenings, I should say. So we did choose morning services because we usually do tend to get up fairly early and then go out and start our day. But that is something just to be aware of. It is no longer twice per day unless you are in a suite, which is a little bit of a letdown. It was always kind of nice to come back to your room at the end of the night as well and just have it be, kind of refreshed. And another thing that you will want to ask your room's attendant for would be a paper cruise compass. So now everything is in the Royal Caribbean app, which is great when you're on the go kind of in the middle of the day. But we do like to kind of review the cruise compass at night when we get back to the room, just to kind of have an idea of what we want to do the next day. And it's just easier to read and kind of go through everything if it's on paper. And plus we keep them for, sentimental memories, I guess.
If you've watched some of our other videos like Navigator of the Seas or Odyssey of the Seas, you'll know that I'm usually not the biggest fan of the merchandise sold aboard Royal Caribbean ships, especially their logo and ship-related t-shirts and that sort of thing. The newer ships like Wonder of the Seas and Odyssey of the Seas have much better merchandise and much better designs in their logo shops than some of the older ships like Adventure, Navigator, or whatever. Symphony of the Seas was one of the last ships built before the shutdown for COVID, and it kind of has a mixture of the older style of Royal Caribbean merchandise and the newer style. It's not quite to the standard of Odyssey of the Seas or Wonder of the Seas, but it is better than, let's say, Harmony or Oasis. The only downside is the logo shop or the Royal Caribbean merchandise store is really small, so when it's busy, there's no chance you're going to be able to walk around that shop and kind of check out everything they have to buy. We didn't really find any shirts that we liked in our sizes, but we did get a magnet and a couple other small little trinket things for our memory cabinet. So make sure you check out the logo shop on Symphony of the Seas and see what we're talking about with the merchandise. It is better than the older ships, but we really hope Royal Caribbean rolls out the style and the type of merch that they have on Odyssey and Wonder through the rest of their fleet eventually. We really hope Icon of the Seas and some of the newer ships have better merch as well. So we're going to wrap this video up right there. This was a quick look at our first 2 port days aboard this 7-night Mediterranean cruise on Symphony of the Seas. In the coming videos, we will have more information on Rome, Naples, Italy, Cinque Terre, and some of the other things that make Symphony of the Seas really cool, and maybe some tips and tricks to make your cruise aboard Symphony of the Seas even better. So if you have any questions about this cruise or any of the other cruises that we've been on, please leave them in the comment section below. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe.
No one's putting you in a van.